everyone, this is Lavpreet Kaur and I welcome you to the episode 2 of our podcast, CD Baat. Today we will be discussing the state of Indian economy pre and post COVID 19. What are the concerns and what could be the possible solutions? So, obviously, for this discussion, we need some economists with us. And so, I would love to welcome Pavan with me, who was there with me in the last podcast as well, the student of Hyderabad University. With him, I would also love to welcome Manisha today, who's my best friend, and she's also the student of MA Economy in the University of Hyderabad. So let's start with a very basic question. How do you feel during the lockdown, Manisha? Could you just share your views about the lockdown? We'll talk about economy next, but initially, I would want to know what's the state otherwise in the lockdown period.
Hi everyone. Thanks Pavan and Lavpreet for having me in the episode 2 of your podcast. Coming to your question, Lavpreet, lockdown has been quite boring for me and I hope it's quite boring for everyone else too. But I think this is a golden opportunity to bond with our families and friends because we are not going to get this kind of time again in near future. So yeah, I think we should make most out of it.
Hey, thanks Manisha for your wonderful answer, and I really hope that this time never comes again. I mean, I swear this time should never come again. But yeah, just like you said, it's important to utilize the time in the good way. Of course, we have so much time with us, and we can all just bond together, think about some critical issues, and get out with some good solutions so that this lockdown proves to be fruitful for all of us. We don't get out with like fallen spirits and negativity, at least after so many days of staying inside and indoors. With this, I would love to ask Pavan as well, what's your status? What's the status with you during this lockdown?
Well, thanks for having me again, Lavpreet. It's a pleasure. A warm welcome to Manisha as well. Now that you asked me about the lockdown, I have only a short point to make. It's a rare opportunity, I believe, and we should not let go of it. This is not only a time for bonding with the families, but it's also a chance for us to introspect. It's a pause button to to see where we have been all the while, and to look back and also to look forward. This is also, in my opinion, a good time to spend learning something new and read online courses, be learning something new. It should be a time spent properly to learn something we have not been able to during in our classes or in our in our workplace, and it also gives us a sense of understanding that when everything shuts down, we have only ourselves to look after. And I hope on that note, I think we can proceed with the looking at the economics of it and how the Indian economy has been performing. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, yes, Pavan, this is a rare opportunity, and I hope all of us are using the time to get something worth out of it. Proceeding with today's topic, lockdown has put a full stop on all of our lives. Marketplaces, offices, transportation, corporations, and every other source of livelihood for people is shut. What do you think is the current effect of the situation? Well, I personally feel that people now are very careful with how to spend because somehow we know that the value of money and the value of all the goods is going to increase in the future. Right now, the demand and consumption is very low, but there could be a very bad effect of this lower consumption in the future. So, what is the current situation according to you?
Absolutely, Lovepreet. You have hit the nail on the head when you say that there has been a demand problem. I'd like to add that not only there has been a demand problem, but because of the lockdown, you even see a supply squeeze. There's a supply shock. For instance, and that manifests in many ways. One of the ways is your migrant laborers are all going back home to the villages, the hometowns. So you don't have enough people to work in your factories when things can open up. So the supply will come down significantly and has already come down by a large extent. And the other way is there's excess inventories, so that go unsold. So you have cars, you have automobiles, you have all your cars and bikes, and your inventories that are that are going unsold. For instance, one of the top companies, Maruti Suzuki, reported a zero sale in the last month, ever since the lockdown, because nobody was coming out to buy the cars. And this is one of the ways things have manifested, and it's a very serious problem. And to add to it, unemployment rate, which was around 9% in March of 2020, turned out that it has gone up at least by 3 times to almost 23 to 27%, as per the latest data which was published by the CMI, or the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. So I'd like to say that there's not only a demand squeeze, also a supply squeeze. However, in my opinion, I would like to say that we should look at the economy not in isolation, rather what happened before COVID hit us, before the corona outbreak happened. I'd like to say that before corona outbreak happened, we were in a sustained deep slowdown, and I think it's essential therefore to discuss what was the state of the economy before corona outbreak happened.
And yes, I agree with Pavan over here that we were already going down through an economic slowdown in the last few years, and the GDP was even less than 5. I mean, the GDP was already very low, and we are expecting that for the fiscal year 2021, we will have a GDP growth of 0%, even if we open the lockdown right now. So, what's your view, Manisha? I would like to ask you, what's your view about the pre COVID situation of our economy? I mean, what would you like to say about it?
In my opinion, India was already going through economic recession. As you said, the GDP was 5%. It is very low compared to the previous financial years. There were many sectors like the automobile sector and the telecommunication sector that were facing losses. The sales of the automobile sector were very low pre COVID 19 outbreak, and the automobile sector has tried to improve its sales, but the sales weren't improved. And coming to the telecommunication sector, the BSNL, the largest public sector undertaking, was running in losses. So we were already in a state of reviving ourselves, and the COVID 19 has hit us hard.
Well, Manisha, that was fairly put. You rightly stated the automobile and telecommunications sector have been badly affected. However, I'd like to take you all to the other side of it, that is the unorganized sector, which includes your MSMEs, which are micro, small, and medium industries. Unorganized sector contributes nearly or employs nearly 80% of the workforce that you have in the country. It includes all your small traders and all of that. They contribute nearly 30% of your total output annually, and also 50% of your exports. Now, if they have been affected, imagine the kind of impact that you would have had already in terms of reduction in exports and reduction in total output. To add to this, I'd like to highlight two more important factors. One is the gross savings rate, or your household savings rate and all that included. What is the percentage of money that you have in the GDP? So the savings rate is almost 30% once upon a time. Now that has come down to 24%. Sharp decline. That means you don't have enough funds to be lent to borrow, those who want to borrow and start up factories and industries. And to add to that, 11 crore MSMEs were recorded as of 2015-16, and now it's almost 7 crores. So 4 crore MSMEs have closed up, and that you can imagine the kind of impact that would have had, and creating unemployment that you have seen from 4% to almost 7% and 9%. So these three, so the contribution of MSMEs has come down, and your savings rate has come down, and your interest rate has gone up. So the prime lending interest rate, which is almost 9%, and America and China and Japan have it hardly beyond the 5% threshold, and we are at 9%. This is a very significant thing. And therefore, I'd like to say that these three factors has led our country, our economy to a big slowdown that it would be very hard to recover from. If we want to see a revival of the economic sentiment, it is essential that we relook our inflation targeting framework of the Reserve Bank, because this is something that restricts growth, and we also need to look at what is something called as the fiscal deficit, or the what is percentage of the borrowing that the government makes. If the fiscal deficit is something that should not be a constraint in times of crisis. I've seen in the US in the 1930s that when there was a Great Depression, the government started printing money. So we have to look at things beyond fiscal deficit and ignore the fiscal deficit for some time if we want to have a revival.
Well, here I would mention that I think telecommunications sector will witness a good boost very soon, thanks to the man on mission who is trying to amplify the power of telecommunication by incorporating e-commerce and finance all in one through a powerful deal. We would no more need 100 apps for many things, and Reliance Jio, I think, is doing the absolute justice to the lockdown revival. So, GDP and all the other important factors, the intrinsic details that you discussed and addressed just now, are very significant at a national level. And the future, as of now, seems very gloomy. All of us, we are very clear about it by now. But I want to know from you, how will a common man be affected by this economic recession? It's almost called to be very similar to the recession of 2008. And after that recession, the superpowers of the world also took a lot of time to recover. How are we gonna face the difficulties once we get out of the lockdown? I mean, just like I mentioned before, as of now, it's been predicted that for the fiscal year 2021, the GDP growth will be 0%. Even if we open the lockdown right now and start our industries right away, even then we are expecting a GDP growth of 0%. And also above that, we are expecting to go into losses. So, what exactly do you think? How exactly all of this is going to affect the life of a common man like you or me? That's what people want to know, because that's what we are concerned with primarily.
That's a good question, Lovepreet. Basically, economic recession means reduction in economic activity. The impact of economic recession on the common man are many. The first one being the fall in employment rate. Due to the recession, that is, the reduction in economic activity, the employment rate falls, which also leads to fall in the wages. The second one being low production due to the low economic activity again, and low production means low supply, and low supply means that we are not meeting the requirement of the present population, or we are not meeting the demand of the population. This leads to inflation, that is rise in prices of every product and goods. Recession is not a big deal as that matter. It is a cycle that the economy goes through every now and then, and the RBI has certain measures through which it can control inflation and recession. But due to the COVID-19 outbreak, the things have been escalated.
Well, Manisha is absolutely right when she says that there's a chain effect that is resulting from a low demand and a low supply situation. Naturally, we see the growth declining very sharply. I'd like to put this in a very different context, that is in terms of sentiments. Due to the lockdown and whatever situation we saw before the lockdown, the situation is going to be aggravated and is already aggravated in terms of sentiment. One is the bankers' sentiment, and the other is the people who want to start industries or your entrepreneurs and all of that. Bankers are refusing to lend money out of fear that there will be more NPAs, and therefore they are going and putting excess money and all excess deposits with the RBI in terms of the reverse repo operations. This is usually called reverse repo operations. Therefore, you see that there's almost 8 lakh crore rupees that is lying with the RBI completely unused except for deposits. You get an interest rate of 3%. What does this mean? There's a lot of money that is coming to the RBI and not going into the economy. So there's a contraction in the money that is used to be used for credit or loans to start fresh industries. If this is one aspect, the other aspect is people or entrepreneurs are not ready to take a risk because of the low economic situation. Entrepreneurs play a major role in any economy, more so in India, because all of your unorganized sector is effectively small scale entrepreneurship. They are refusing to take any loans out of a fear that there is no enough demand. So this cycle is going to be a very vicious cycle, and we have to see that it is arrested or at least controlled or controlled before things get much worse. In my opinion, we are not in a very, it's not a all out in the long run everybody day is dead situation, because there's still hope, in my opinion, that we can revive the economy even at this stage. And there are many ways to do it. And therefore, I think at the next stage we need to look at is how do we control this crisis?
Yes, very true, Manisha. The number of times that the world has witnessed a recession or depression, we have been able to cope up with it and we have come out of it. It's just that this time the reason, unlike all the other times, is not the failure in economic practices or the system, but a pandemic. And Pavan, you have added some crucial aspects to this discussion. Well, I think we have now realized the fact that continuing this way, we are not going to end up in a very good situation anyway, which is why India is now preparing an exit plan, the trailer of which we have recently seen as the government opened the liquor shops. So, at this point, I think it's very important to understand what is this alcohol tax truth. So, basically, the total revenue generated in a state depends upon several factors, out of which just an estimate of 12% depends upon the excise, which is basically produced from liquor, the tax on liquor. And right now, we have no products or services used, there is no consumption at all. We have no vehicles which have been sold or which have been used for travel. Above that, we have nothing else. I mean, the other sources of tax are not in use as of now. That is why the sale of liquor was encouraged by the central government, from which the states can generate at least some revenue to run the economy. This is the logic behind it. So basically, alcohol tax is a huge money source for almost all the states, except for the states which have ban on liquor. The corona tax is applied moreover above the normal tax to compensate with the economic downfall or the loss. This is a good strategy. I mean, the only thing is at an implementation level, it didn't work that well and which can actually cause more problems. But otherwise, the idea was good enough. Also, if we look at it in a positive way, if the tax on liquor increases, the consumption of liquor will also reduce. I mean, at least people will consume less liquor, which is why it will indirectly benefit the health of people as well. I mean, that's totally my opinion. But yes, I feel if the tax on something increases, that way it's an indirect benefit to your health as well. While on the other hand, adding to the point which Manisha and Pavan made, DA and salary reduction by the state government and the central government is being seen right now. It's one of the austerity measures that has been taken by the central government to improve the financial status of the country. So revenue and taxes are increased and pensions and salaries are decreasing. In fact, fuel tax is also increasing right now, which is a good step. I think which is a good step because otherwise the rate of fuel is going down these days on a world level. But if India implies taxes on fuel as well, they can revive the economy in a way. We can also put some taxes or revenue on fast food, maybe on unhealthy food, just like Hungary and Mexico have done it. I mean, they have put taxes on unhealthy or fast food based on some particular measures or factors, where they count the sugar levels or salt levels of the food, or they count the calorie density of the food, and based on that they put the taxes. So this is how we can cope up with this, I mean, just an opinion. And also we can just reduce the or stop basically the useless spending of central government. Many projects like the Central Vista project, infrastructural projects which are not needed as of now, that they can be stopped, I feel. Given that I've been given the benefits that I've quoted, now I want to know from Manisha and Pavan what's their opinion on it, and then we'll be closing because I think we are able to produce at least some solutions for this problem. Even the PM Care funds need to be used in a very good way, in an appropriate way. Apart from which, I would love to know from Manisha and Pavan what do they think can be done in order to cope up with the crisis that we are going through right now.
I agree with you on this, Lovepreet. I don't think the taxes levied by the government on fuel and liquor are harsh. They are the necessity of the hour right now because the government needs the revenue. Because, as we all know, due to the lockdown, there's a huge loss of revenue to the government, and the government has to get it back by some or the other way. And there's no better way than increasing the taxes. I know there might be some problem that the common man may face due to this, but it's a necessity of the hour.
Yeah, I would also like to recall what Pavan said in the beginning, that the migrant labor crisis is one of the another big issues of lockdown, and definitely we need to help them as well. I mean, these migrant laborers who are roaming free right now have no employment, have no food to eat, have no money to sustain, and so they might turn really vigorous. I mean, they're already in anger and they could be used by wrong people, influencers, to cause a lot of problem in the nation, which could be an threat to the national security also. So it's very important to deploy these brains, because an empty mind is a home for devil, and definitely before the devil takes in their brain, we need to capture their energies and do something good with it. So in this perspective also, I would like to hear from both of you what are the possible solutions from your side, apart from the ones which I have discussed.
Well, Lavpreet and Manisha, thank you for the opinion you have put across on the issue of tax on liquor, tax on the petrol and diesel, and the DA allowance, the cut in the DA for employees of the government. In my opinion, I think the tax on liquor is something that is very much needed because it will be able to control the demand you have amongst the public for consumption of liquor. It's a very good move. When it comes to the issue of taxes on raising excise duty on petrol and diesel, to be specific, it's not a very good move because it will be only sustainable. It will be helpful only for the next 1 2 months maybe, because unless oil marketing companies start producing more oil and then they start selling more oil, you'll not be able to see much of the impact in containing the price of petrol in India. Already you have a staggered transport where people are not moving, so there's no logic to, in my opinion, the raising the excise duty for petrol and diesel. On the other hand, when it comes to the DA and cut in the DA, dearness allowance as it's called, the government employees, one must understand that the same government employees who are at the forefront working every day to try to control the virus, be it in managing the departments and all of that. But that would be backfiring because that would reduce their morale to work because and there'll be also a lot of discontentment because of the DA issue. And already cutting salaries will never be a way out. Rather, you should think about restructuring the government and in terms of administration and the structure. You have a lot of departments which sometimes overlap in functions, and this leads to departmental conflicts, which is very unfortunate. and delays a lot of projects also. So you need to think of reforming the government structure and making it more lean rather than have it have all these ad hoc steps such as cutting a DA and all of that. When it comes to trying to find a way out of the crisis, I think we have to look at the structure of Indian economy as it stands today. We have a lot of unorganized enterprises and the sector playing a major role. We have to cater to it, and the migrant workers are most often a part of the unorganized sector. They are employed by the unorganized sector in a big way, be it in the construction, be it in the small restaurants, hotels, small industries, factories, and all of that. Therefore, we have to address the issue of migrant workers on a war footing, because you can't have unemployed people left for fodder and they can become a problem to the society. And the other way, the other focus should be on bringing in radical reforms. You can go for a unique way of government spending and getting government revenue, but not by going for more tax the rich, and that's taxing the rich. And trust me, tax is a retrograde step and does not work anymore in the modern construct. Tax is an 18th and Robin Hood time era idea which has no place today. Therefore, what is the solution? What is the other way out? We have a Black Money Act, and that has been passed by the government. We have also, India is also a signatory to the United Nations Convention on Black Money, through which you can nationalize all these foreign bank accounts of Indian nationals and Indian origin nationals. You have all these Nirav Modi people and others who have a lot of these accounts already. We have information as well. So the only way what is remains to be done is to nationalize all of them, so that all that money becomes property of the government. So that way you have almost 120 lakh crore as estimated by Dr. Subramanian Swamy, who is a very well-known economist from the parliament. All this 120 lakh crore comes into the kitty of the government. What will happen then? You have at least 6 times the money that you currently have in terms of revenue. Apart from all this black money, bringing it back, the other way out is to free up all these MSMEs from all sorts of regulations, like we have done currently in the state of Uttar Pradesh, where except three main laws, all the other laws have been kept in abeyance for some time to provide the necessary relief to all these small and medium industries, which are the most affected. So, that alone will not be, however, sufficient to create adequate sentiment. You need to also raise the rate of fixed deposit to enable more savings. We have seen that the savings has come down significantly. It has to come up again. We have to do something to raise it again. And on top of it, we can go for reduction in income tax or even doing away with it completely. Because income tax, as one sees it, has become an instrument of harassment, and it's not so easy for any government official to say that we'll be more considerate with you in dealing with income tax matters, and therefore one should think of doing away with income tax. That's my three suggestions. I would also like to hear Manisha's feedback on what can be done to revive the sentiment, importantly, and as a result, the economy.
Has brought tough times to all of us, as all of us had cuts in our salaries and perks, but the worst hit by the lockdown are the migrant workers. As we all hear, every now and then there is news about the migrant workers being dead for walking miles together to reach their home or to get some work in order to get some food. The short term resolution the government can work upon is to communicate well with the state governments. It is not that the government is not doing so now, but it has to communicate with the state government and several other multiple agencies related with the migrant workers, because approximately there are 14 crore migrant workers in our country, and the government needs help of all the multiple agencies and the state government together to reach out to the migrant workers. And also there has been a fund raised for the help of the migrant workers, and again the government has to check with these agencies that the fund raised is actually reaching the migrant workers or no. As a long term solution, that is, when the lockdown gets over and everything is back to normal, the government can put pressure on the investors and the industries to take the migrant laborers in large numbers and give them a good amount of salary and perks, because if not supported by the government and the industries, it will be very tough for the migrant workers to survive this pandemic. Talking of the revival of the economy, India can replace the Chinese goods with its own. India can actually replace the goods that come from China with the local made goods, which would actually cover a huge percentage of the loss that has been incurred during the lockdown. And the second factor that can help in the revival of the economy, as we all know, is the foreign direct investment. The capital from the foreign direct investment can only help us revive the economy and get back to normal. I would not say it's an easy task for the government or for the people to get back to normal. It's going to be a very tough task for the government as well as the people of the country to get back to normal.
Well, Manisha, I'd just like to add one small point, in fact, to what you have just said. If you look at the forex reserves by way of FDI and FPI, we have a lot of that. So we can utilize some of our forex reserves also to try to leverage on the economic losses that we have incurred. To add to it, if you look at foreign companies coming to India and all of that, that will be only possible if we have a robust infrastructure. We might have a good political system and stability, but we also need to have a robust infrastructure system and minimum regulations, and I think that's the way ahead. The reason I say we need more focus on infrastructure is only if we have a strong infrastructure will the companies also be eager to come and invest.
Swadeshi is one of the oldest suggestions, and I agree that we can implement it to overcome this obstacle as well. Make in India is one of the ways, definitely. Very well said, Manisha. Well, I think we all have to agree with the fact that Pavan and Manisha are economy students for a reason. The insights shared by both of you sounded very smart and appealing, and I hope all our listeners would agree with this. We have something very good in the otherwise bad time. At least the youth leaders are able to analyze the current crisis and give so many suggestions for improvement. This is one of the most valuable investments in the lockdown and the pandemic. We are all set for the exit plan expected to be launched on May the 17th. Let's see who all of us will be supported by the government to add to the economic revival apart from those who are already fighting the battle at the front line. But we must all remember that several aspects have to be kept in mind to come up with the dynamic and multifaceted plan for the sentiment and economic revival. We're all together in this. It's time that I now thank all of you for joining us and especially thank our guest Manisha for sparing her time to add so much value to our initiative. Thank you everyone. We will see you in the next podcast. Signing off, this is Lavpreet Kaur.